The Vexlor battle fleet hung in the darkness of space like predators circling wounded prey. Commander Zethra stood on the bridge of the flagship, her 4 eyes fixed on the strange vessel floating before them. The ship was primitive by Vexlor standards, its hull marked with scorch marks and what appeared to be hastily welded patches. It drifted silently, running on minimal power, appearing abandoned or crippled. "Scanning complete, Commander," announced the sensor technician, his mandibles clicking nervously. "The vessel designation translates to UNSC Defiant. Origin planet is listed as Earth, 3rd planet in a yellow star system." Zethra leaned forward in her command chair. The Vexlor Empire had been expanding through this sector for 3 cycles now, encountering dozens of species. Most surrendered immediately upon seeing the might of the battle fleet. Those who resisted were crushed within solar rotations. This Earth ship would be no different. "What armaments does it carry?" she asked. The technician's skin flushed pale, a sign of confusion among the Vexlor. "Commander, the readings are unusual. The ship appears to be carrying what our database identifies as chemical propellant weapons, kinetic missiles, some form of magnetic acceleration system." A ripple of amusement passed through the bridge crew. One of the tactical officers allowed himself a clicking laugh. "Chemical weapons? Do they still burn fuel to create thrust as well?" "Affirmative, sir. Their primary propulsion appears to be controlled fusion reactions, extremely inefficient compared to our quantum drives." Zethra felt her confidence grow. The Vexlor had abandoned such primitive technology thousands of cycles ago. Their plasma lances could cut through battle stations. Their shield technology could withstand the output of a small star. And these humans were still using chemical explosives? "Life signs?" she asked. "Approximately 2,000 aboard. Biped mammals, carbon-based. Remarkably similar to several other species we've encountered, though these ones appear to come from a significantly higher gravity world than most." "Hail them," Zethra commanded. "Let's see if these primitives understand the situation they're in." The communications officer worked his controls, and a screen flickered to life. The image was grainy and filled with static, another sign of inferior technology. A human face appeared, male by the facial structure, with close-cropped dark hair and eyes that held an unsettling steadiness. "This is Captain Marcus Wade of the UNSC Defiant. Who am I addressing?" "I am Commander Zethra of the Vexlor Imperial Fleet. Your vessel has entered territory claimed by the Vexlor Empire. You will power down all systems and prepare to be boarded. Resist, and you will be destroyed." The human captain's expression didn't change. No fear, no panic, just that same steady gaze. "I'm afraid we can't do that, Commander. We're on a patrol mission in neutral space. You have no authority here." Zethra felt her temper flare. Did this primitive actually think he could refuse? "You don't seem to understand your situation, Captain. We have 6 warships to your 1 damaged vessel. Our weapons technology is centuries beyond yours. This is not a negotiation." "Everything's a negotiation, Commander." Captain Wade leaned back slightly. "But if you want to make this military, let me be clear. The Defiant has been through worse than you, and we're still here. I suggest you move along." The audacity of the statement left Zethra momentarily speechless. Around her, the bridge crew exchanged glances of disbelief. A single primitive vessel was threatening an entire battle fleet? "Sir," the tactical officer spoke up, "their weapon systems are powering up. Primitive as they are, they're preparing to fight." Zethra made her decision. These humans needed to learn their place in the galactic order. 1 demonstration would be sufficient. Target their engine section with a low-power plasma lance, just enough to disable them. Once they're dead in space, they'll be more reasonable. "Targeting now, Commander." On the view screen, the Vexlor flagship's main weapon began to glow with accumulated energy. It would take only seconds to charge, and the shot would cripple the human ship without destroying it. Zethra wanted survivors who could spread word of Vexlor superiority, but something happened that Zethra had not anticipated. The moment before the plasma lance fired, the human ship moved, not with the slow, ponderous thrust of fusion drives, but with a sudden burst of acceleration that seemed impossible for a vessel of its size. The Defiant rolled hard to starboard, and the plasma lance missed by mere kilometers. What? Zethra stood from her chair. How did they move that fast? Unknown, Commander. Their acceleration profile is inconsistent with their propulsion system specifications. Before anyone could respond, the Defiant fired back. Dozens of missiles streaked from its hull, each one burning hard on chemical engines that the Vexlor had dismissed as primitive. The flagship's shields flickered online automatically, more than sufficient to stop such basic weapons. The first missile struck the shields and detonated. The explosion was massive, far larger than chemical reactions should produce. The shields held, but the energy readings made several crew members gasp in alarm. "That was nuclear!" the sensor technician shouted. "They're using fusion warheads!" "Nuclear weapons?" Zethra's voice held disbelief. "Who still uses nuclear weapons?" But there was no time to contemplate human barbarism. The missiles kept coming. Wave after wave, each one detonating against the shields in a cascade of atomic fury. The shield generators began to whine with strain. "Commander, shield strength at 70%, 65%. They're overwhelming the emitters with raw firepower." "Return fire! All ships, engage!" The Vexlor fleet opened up with their plasma lances, great beams of superheated energy that could reduce asteroids to vapor. But the human ship kept moving, dodging and weaving with an agility that shouldn't be possible. Some shots connected, scorching the Defiant's hull, but the ship refused to slow down. "Their hull armor is ablating the plasma strikes," the tactical officer reported, his voice rising with stress. "Commander, their armor is designed to disperse heat. Our weapons are less effective than they should be." More missiles launched from the human ship. These ones were different, moving faster, accelerating harder. They slammed into the flagship's shields with such force that the entire vessel shuddered. "Shields at 40%! We need to withdraw and regroup." Zethra watched in growing horror as the primitive human vessel carved through her formation like a blade. One of her frigates took a direct hit from what appeared to be a magnetic accelerator weapon, a solid slug of metal moving at a significant fraction of light speed. The projectile punched clean through the frigate's shields and hull, emerging from the other side in a spray of debris and atmosphere. "All ships! Evasive maneuvers! Concentrate fire on that vessel!" But even as she gave the order, Zethra realized something that made her blood run cold. The humans weren't just fighting. They were hunting. Every movement was calculated, every shot placed with precision. This wasn't a desperate battle from an outmatched crew. This was a predator showing its teeth. "Commander, incoming transmission from the human vessel." Captain Wade's face appeared again on the screen. His ship was burning, trailing atmosphere and debris, but his expression remained unchanged. "I gave you a chance to leave, Commander. Now let me show you why that was the smart choice." The Defiant's entire bow lit up with energy, and Zethra felt true fear for the first time in her military career. The magnetic accelerator cannon, what the humans called a Mach gun, fired with devastating effect. The slug was merely iron and tungsten, nothing exotic or advanced by galactic standards. But the humans had accelerated it to speeds that made it more dangerous than most energy weapons. When it struck the Vexlor cruiser on the port flank, the kinetic energy transfer was catastrophic. The cruiser's shields, designed to disperse energy weapons, did almost nothing against solid matter moving at such velocity. The slug punched through the shield emitters, through the hull plating, through 3 internal decks, and out the other side. The cruiser spun wildly, venting atmosphere and bodies into space. "All ships, focus fire!" Zethra screamed into the communications channel. "Destroy that vessel now!" The remaining 5 Vexlor warships unleashed everything they had. Plasma lances, particle beams, and quantum torpedoes filled the space between the fleets with deadly light. The Defiant took hits, lots of them, and chunks of its armor boiled away under the assault. Warning klaxons blared across the human ship's bridge as damage reports flooded in. But it wasn't enough. The Defiant kept coming, kept firing, and the Vexlor were learning a terrible lesson that dozens of human enemies had learned before them. Humans built their weapons with one purpose: to kill. There was no elegance, no efficiency, just brutal, overwhelming force designed to destroy whatever stood in their way. Another frigate exploded as a spread of nuclear missiles saturated its point defense systems. The warheads detonated simultaneously, and the combined blast tore the smaller vessel apart. "Commander, we've lost the Swift Talon and the Morning Pride. The Guardian's duty is disabled and drifting." The tactical officer's voice cracked with panic. "We need to retreat!" Zethra stared at the tactical display, unable to process what she was seeing. 6 Vexlor warships, pride of the Empire, being dismantled by a single damaged human vessel. It was impossible. Their technology was superior in every measurable way. The scans had confirmed it. "The scans," she whispered, then louder. "Pull up the detailed scans of their vessel. Show me everything." The sensor technician worked frantically, and data flooded across the screens. Zethra forced herself to look past the primitive elements she'd dismissed before. The chemical propellants, yes, but look at the yield ratios. The fusion drives, crude, but powerful enough to push the ship at accelerations that would liquefy most species. The armor wasn't advanced alloys, it was simple metals, but layered in ways that dispersed heat and impact across the entire hull structure. And the crew. She pulled up the biological data, really examining it for the first time. High-gravity world. Atmospheric pressure greater than Vexlor standard. Higher oxygen content. These weren't just similar to other bipeds. These were creatures forged in harsher conditions than the Vexlor had ever known. "Their home world," Zethra said quietly. "Pull up the scan data on their planet of origin." "Commander, we're in the middle of combat." "Do it!" The data appeared, and Zethra felt her stomachs turn. Earth. Gravity 1.3 times Vexlor standard. Atmospheric pressure 1.2 times standard. A world covered in massive oceans, violent weather systems. Tectonic activity that reshaped continents. A world where everything, from the smallest microbe to the largest predator, had to fight simply to survive. And humans sat at the top of that world's food chain. "They're Deathworlders," she breathed. "We attacked Deathworlders." The tactical officer looked up from his station. "Commander, what do we do?" Before Zethra could answer, the Defiant launched another barrage. But this time, the missiles didn't target the warships. They spread out in a wide pattern, detonating in a sphere around the Vexlor fleet. The nuclear explosions created a massive electromagnetic pulse that washed over every ship. Systems across the flagship flickered and died. The lights went dark, then emergency power kicked in with a dull red glow. Half the control panels were dead. The quantum communications array was offline. The shield generators were cycling through reboot sequences that would take precious minutes. "They used their primitive weapons to create an electronic warfare attack," the sensor technician said in amazement. "The EMP from the nuclear detonations fried our systems. Our shielding wasn't designed to handle that kind of broad-spectrum interference." In the darkness of the crippled bridge, Zethra understood. The Vexlor had spent centuries refining their technology, making it more efficient, more sophisticated, more elegant. They'd eliminated the crude and brutal methods of their ancestors. The humans had never stopped using them, they'd simply made them bigger. The Defiant came alongside the flagship, close enough that Zethra could see the battle damage across its hull. Sections were torn open, exposing the internal structure. Fires burned in compartments open to space. The ship was dying, but it was taking the Vexlor fleet with it. Captain Wade's face appeared on the screen again, the transmission cutting through the interference. "Commander Zethra, I'm going to give you one more chance. Take your ships and leave. Spread the word that human space is not to be invaded. Do that, and you get to live." Zethra looked around her bridge. Half her crew was dead or injured. Her fleet was shattered. Her most advanced warships had been beaten by a single damaged vessel using weapons her species had abandoned millennia ago. Pride warred with survival instinct. The Empire would demand answers. They would want to know how she'd let this happen. But none of that would matter if she was dead. "All ships," she transmitted on the fleet channel, her voice steady despite the defeat. "Break off and retreat. Maximum speed." The remaining Vexlor vessels turned and ran, their damaged hulls limping away from the battlefield. Zethra kept her eyes on the view screen, watching the Defiant grow smaller. The human ship didn't pursue. It simply hung there in space, burning and broken, but victorious. "Captain Wade," Zethra said slowly, "you've made an enemy of the Vexlor Empire today. We will return with more ships, more weapons. This isn't over." The human captain's expression finally changed. He smiled, but it wasn't a pleasant expression. It was the smile of a predator who'd just made a kill. "Commander, we're counting on it. The Defiant is one ship, and she's 3 months past due for maintenance. We've got 200 more just like her in the home fleet, and another 800 spread across our territory. Some of them are even fully operational." He leaned forward slightly. "So when you go back to your empire, when you make your report, I want you to tell them something. Tell them that humans don't have the best technology. We don't have the most efficient engines or the most powerful shields. What we have is simple. We have weapons that were designed to kill things that wanted to kill us first. We come from a world that's been trying to murder us since before we climbed down from the trees. And we're still here." The transmission cut off, leaving Zethra alone with her thoughts and her failures. Around her, the bridge crew worked to restore systems and tend to the wounded. No one spoke. No one knew what to say. They'd gone hunting for primitive prey and found an apex predator instead. The question now was whether the Vexlor Empire would learn from this lesson, or whether arrogance would lead them to make the same mistake again on a larger scale. The Vexlor High Council Chamber was designed to inspire awe and fear in equal measure. Towering columns stretched toward a domed ceiling that displayed a holographic map of the Empire's territory. Thousands of systems marked in the traditional purple of Vexlor control. Commander Zethra stood in the center of the chamber, surrounded by the 12 members of the High Council, and felt neither awe nor fear. She felt only the weight of what she knew was coming. "You lost 4 warships to a single primitive vessel," High Counselor Vexthor said, his voice echoing through the chamber. "You retreated from a species that still uses chemical explosives. Explain how this is possible." Zethra had spent the 3-week journey back to the homeworld preparing her report. She'd reviewed every sensor log, every tactical recording, every piece of data from the engagement. The conclusions were unavoidable, even if they were unpleasant. "The humans are not primitive," she said clearly. "They are Death Worlders. Their technology isn't inferior. It's adapted to their nature. We made assumptions based on technological sophistication without considering practical application." "Death Worlders," another counselor scoffed. "We've encountered high-gravity species before. They break like anyone else." "With respect, counselor, no, we haven't. Not like this." Zethra activated her datapad, and holographic displays appeared around the chamber. "Earth has gravity 1.3 times our standard. But that's just the beginning. The planet has extreme temperature variations, violent weather systems, aggressive microbial life, and an evolutionary history defined by competition and predation. The humans are the dominant species because they outcompeted everything else on a world that was actively trying to kill them." She changed the display to show tactical footage from the battle. Look at their weapons. We dismissed them as primitive because they use kinetic force and nuclear reactions. But those weapons are devastatingly effective. A magnetic accelerator cannon is simple physics. Mass times velocity equals force. The humans accelerate slugs to relativistic speeds. Our shields weren't designed to stop that kind of attack because we assumed no one would still be using such crude methods. So they surprised you? Vexthor said. That won't happen again. We'll adapt our tactics, strengthen our shields, and return with overwhelming force. That's exactly what they expect, Zethra replied. I reviewed our cultural database on humanity. They've been fighting wars against each other for their entire recorded history. Conventional wars, nuclear wars, information wars, economic wars. They've studied conflict in ways we abandoned when we united our species. When we arrive with a larger fleet, they'll be ready. The council chamber fell silent. Several counselors exchanged uncomfortable glances. The Vexlor Empire had existed for over 6,000 cycles. Expanding steadily through conquest and absorption, they'd never encountered a species that truly frightened them. What do you propose? Vexthor finally asked. Negotiate. Establish a border agreement and leave human space alone. Unacceptable! The shout came from Counselor Zethrak, one of the more militant members. The Empire does not negotiate with primitives. We conquer or we ignore them. We cannot show weakness. Zethra turned to face him directly. Then prepare for war. A real war, not the conquests we're used to. The humans won't surrender after a show of force. They'll fight for every planet, every system, every orbital station, and they'll make us bleed for every meter we take. She pulled up more data, information her analysts had compiled. After the battle, we intercepted human communications. The Defiant sent a full report to their command. We expected panic, calls for reinforcements, perhaps even preparation to abandon that sector. Instead, their military command sent back congratulations and a repair schedule. They treated a battle against 6 warships as routine patrol action. Impossible, Zethrak said, but his voice lacked conviction. I thought so too. So I had my intelligence team dig deeper. We found references to something called the Human Covenant War. It happened in their recent past, less than 50 cycles ago. The humans fought a coalition of multiple alien species called the Covenant. This coalition had superior technology, superior numbers, and superior resources. The war lasted 30 years. The humans lost billions of their people, dozens of their colony worlds, and came within days of extinction. She paused, letting that sink in. They won. The silence in the chamber was absolute. Zethra continued, driving the point home. The Covenant had energy shields, plasma weapons, and faster-than-light travel centuries before humanity. By every metric we use to measure military strength, the Covenant should have crushed humanity in months. Instead, the humans adapted, innovated, and fought back. They turned their ships into bombs. They fought hand-to-hand against species physically stronger than them. They used nuclear weapons on their own colonies to deny them to the enemy. And when all else failed, they kept fighting anyway. Why are you telling us this? Vexthor asked quietly. Because I need the Council to understand what we're facing. Humans don't think like we do. When we calculate the cost of war, we measure resources, time, and acceptable casualties. Humans measure whether they can survive the fight, and as long as they can survive, they'll keep coming. They don't retreat because the odds are bad. They retreat to regroup and attack from a different angle. Counselor Vex Mora, who had been silent until now, spoke up. What do the humans want? If we're to negotiate, what are their terms likely to be? Zethra had thought about this extensively. Based on my interaction with Captain Wade and the intelligence we've gathered, I believe they want 2 things. First, recognition of their territorial sovereignty. Second, assurance that we won't attack their colonies or their allies. In exchange, they'll likely offer non-aggression and possibly trade agreements. They want to be left alone, Vexmora said thoughtfully. And in return, they'll leave us alone. Essentially, yes. Humans have a saying, "Don't tread on me." It's a warning. Stay off their territory, respect their boundaries, and there's no conflict. Cross those lines, and they'll make you regret it. Zethrock stood, his posture aggressive. The Council cannot seriously be considering this. We are the Vexlor Empire. We have conquered hundreds of species across thousands of systems. These humans have what? A few dozen colony worlds? We outnumber them 100 to 1. And they'll kill 10 of our soldiers for every one of theirs, Zethra shot back. They'll rig their stations to explode when we board them. They'll crash their ships into ours if they run out of ammunition. They'll fight in ways we can't predict because they've spent their entire existence fighting each other, learning every possible way to wage war. Is that really what you want for the Empire? The argument might have continued, but Vexthor raised a hand for silence. The High Counselor was old, having led the Council for over 2 cycles, and his experience carried weight. Commander Zethra, you've given us much to consider. Withdraw while the Council deliberates. Zethra bowed and left the chamber. She walked through the corridors of the governmental complex, past officials and military personnel who whispered as she passed. Word of the disaster had spread quickly. Some saw her as a failure, the commander who'd been beaten by primitives. Others saw her as a survivor, the one who'd been smart enough to retreat. She found a balcony overlooking the capital city and stared out at the sprawling metropolis. The Vexlor had built a magnificent civilization based on order, efficiency, and calculated expansion. They'd forgotten what it meant to face an enemy that didn't care about any of those things. 3 hours later, she was summoned back to the council chamber. Vexathor looked older than he had that morning, the weight of the decision visible in his posture. "The council has decided," he announced. "We will send a diplomatic envoy to the humans. We will offer a non-aggression treaty and recognize their territorial claims. But," he fixed Zethra with a stern gaze, "you will command the escort fleet for the envoy. If the humans prove treacherous, if this is some elaborate trap, you will ensure our diplomats escape safely." Zethra bowed deeply, feeling both relief and trepidation. "I understand, High Counselor. May I speak freely?" "You've been doing so all day. Continue. The humans won't betray us, not unless we give them reason to. They're warriors, yes, but they're also pragmatists. They've learned that sometimes the best way to win is not to fight at all. As long as we approach them honestly and respect their boundaries, I believe this will be the beginning of a lasting peace." "Let us hope you're right, Commander, because if you're wrong, you'll have started a war that could destroy the Empire." 3 months later, the diplomatic vessel approached human space, escorted by 6 warships, including Zethra's flagship. They'd sent advance notice of their peaceful intentions, and a human vessel came out to meet them. It wasn't a warship this time, but a diplomatic courier, sleek and small. The negotiations took 2 weeks. The humans were direct and practical, asking for clear borders and mutual defense agreements. They offered technology exchanges, trade routes, and cultural programs. They spoke of peace not as the absence of war, but as the foundation for prosperity. When the treaty was finally signed, Zethra found herself face to face with Captain Wade again. His ship had been repaired and upgraded, ready for patrol duty once more. "Commander Zethra," he said, extending his hand in the human gesture of greeting, "I'm glad we could resolve this without more bloodshed." She clasped his hand, feeling the strength in his grip. "As am I, Captain, though I must ask, if we'd been foolish enough to come back with more ships, what would you have done?" Wade smiled that predator's smile again. "We'd have made sure more humans showed up than you expected. And, Commander, some of them would have been flying ships that weren't 3 months overdue for maintenance." The message was clear. The Defiant had been a wounded, tired vessel pushed past its limits. and it had still torn through a Vexlor battle fleet. Zethra didn't want to imagine what fresh, fully equipped human warships could do. As the diplomatic vessels prepared to depart, Zethra looked out at Earth hanging in the distance, a blue and green marble that had birthed a species of survivors. The Vexlor had learned their lesson. Some species were better as allies than enemies, and humanity was absolutely one of them.